Oops, sorry. Let me start this over again. Sorry, guys, I had the mic off. Welcome to Dropping It. Oh, boy, here comes another one. Here we go. Hello? Hey, okay. Right in the middle of my stream, but I guess I could stop it and restart it. Okay. Right. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm going to start this over again. So this is Dropping in a Pipeline Audio number 115, and this is called When Facts Aren't Facts. And so first thing I had to deal with was this week. Well, actually, we've been dealing with this for a long time, but this week has been exceptionally ugly, and that's the subject of code signing. So code signing, according to Wikipedia, who says this article needs additional citations for verification, code signing is the process of digitally signing executables and scripts to confirm the software author and guarantee that the code has not been altered or corrupted since it was signed. The process employs the use of a cryptographic hash to validate authenticity and integrity. We're starting to see a lot of things. Apples are notorious for this, and we'll get back into that in a little bit. But, not that we haven't had verifications of different sorts. A lot of times this thing seems to be a solution in search of a problem. We've gone along just fine for a long time without code signing, but it is what it is, and a lot of companies are insisting on this. So first of all, Pro Tools. If you want to run your AAX plugins, you have to have code signing on it. And if you guys were wondering, like, why, was it last year when I was begging people to sign a petition to allow developers to develop in VST2 again? This is why. Because allegedly out there, you got a lot of people, and I hope they're eating crow now, because now they know they were completely wrong, completely full of it. And those that did attack me without warrant, I think now we know that that was just a baseless attack on me when I was talking about this. It is not easy to get code signing done. I've seen so many claims that it's just so simple to get code signing by Apple or whatever. It's not. It can take forever. There's a lot of scammers out there that prey on companies to expedite the process, and it's just not a simple thing. And there was no reason. This is an artificial gatekeeper, and I understand if you do really want something that has a certificate of authenticity or whatever, I'm okay with it as long as it's doable. But in Reaper, I don't have to get a code signed plugin in order to run. This whole thing about it being lazy developers or whatever, no, code signing is a nightmare. We just had to renew ours this year, and we didn't do anything different. There's nothing different about us. We don't have any injunctions against us or whatever, but it ends up taking a month to get this done again. So in the meantime, but luckily it wasn't just us, but a lot of companies. The customers are screwed in the meantime. They bought a product and they're not able to use it. And I don't like... I try and be as gear agnostic as I possibly can, and that includes software. But if your software requires you to code sign things, I'd kind of be really sure that you know what you're getting into when you're messing with this kind of stuff. You are at the mercy of so many other people just to do your job at that point, and I wouldn't recommend it. That's how I would say it. It's not a good idea, and that I talk about Macs a lot on here, and I really don't like how things are going with Apple right now. And not that I want a monopoly. I definitely don't want a monopoly, but I just really, what I would say is, unless you're a computer expert, or have one very handy to you. And I know there's a million examples out there with personal anecdotes how everything's always been perfect for you or whatever, but I'll just put it this way. Unless you are a computer expert or know somebody very close who is one, I wouldn't recommend getting a Mac right now. There's just too many stupid things that are just dead simple to do on other platforms and are extremely difficult on OS X right now. And it's just absolutely bonkers. We got some crazy advice from Apple's developers. Absolutely unconscionable what they wanted us to do, which is I would not do this to our customers ever. And Apple, I would just say, please, if you don't have to have an Apple for some reason, maybe there is a reason for you, then I would stay the hell away from them. And maybe if enough people really stood up, Apple would stop this shenanigans. Unfortunately, I keep hearing from people that Windows is going to go the same way, and we're seeing more and more code signing, and one day maybe the Windows will be as crippled as the Apples are. So hopefully people can figure out a way to just say no, and just, this is just such a nightmare, and I'd rather we don't have to deal with any of this. Okay, so got another thing going here. It's actually a pretty interesting comment, interesting thread, and I'm going to paste this up so I can get to the post that I wanted. You know, we talk here a lot of times when you know, what's the difference between different topologies? You know, there's so much religious stuff out there that you know, a certain thing has to be used in order to get a certain sound, and you know, people make claims about things that just aren't true. They're never backed by evidence. You know, that's. But anyway, at the Safe Space, there was a post called "Logic Behind Tubes versus Regular Mic Sound Difference," and the original poster asked, "Do tubes and mics actually color the sound at all?" Take a look at the attached pictures, which shows signal curve of a tube and a transistor. They look awfully lot the same. Unless you start driving the tube, transistor, or op amp into distortion levels, there should probably be zero difference in the sound. None of the microphones I know drive signal to such high volumes. That's what guitar distortion pedals are for. In other words, take a tube mic, I screw it in one place so it won't move at all. I play a digitally reproducible test signal into it and record it. Then I take out the tube and replace it with the transistor or whatever electronics that does the same thing as the tube electronics did. I record the exact same test signal again. I compare the results. What do I hear? Will there be any kind of perceivable difference in them at all? And judging by the graphs, there shouldn't be unless I drive the signal through a tube distortion box. Now, right off the bat, I know you guys will, you know for sure the people who don't believe in graphs or measurements, of course, are going to attack this thing. But you know, I'm always asking, what is it that makes people think that makes people believe in these religions? Like, why do they make all these claims about mic preamps and stuff? And it's let's see. So one of the answers was, I couldn't bring myself to read the whole thread, but it appears that the OP holds to the religious belief that science can measure, identify everything, and is therefore looking for evidence that we don't have the capacity to collect. And you know, that is backwards. Science can measure and identify most of what's important here. More importantly than that, though, if you don't see a difference in a transfer function or a frequency response or noise, I don't know what else you need to measure. And then you kind of you see the thing. Oh, you can't use your ears in a blindfold A/B comparison. Well, let's figure out that there's something there first. But what really got me here, and I gotta find these this post here. So here was a post here, and this is the reason for the title for this week. Who was it said something like, to make a theory, you come up with an idea and just try to find things that support it. That's not science, by the way. That's some straw man version of science. By the way, I agree with you on what a definition of a scientist really is. Facts are facts within the realm of their given context and realm, but not always in a different realm or area. And so I had to ask, of course, which realm are facts not facts in? So what did I get back? Of course, there's the obligatory political post. Strawberry fields, nothing is real. We are still in an era of alternative facts, probably from 2016 on until the sun fizzles out. So somebody else posted back to me, the realm of science. Francisco Reddy disproved the fact of spontaneous generation. Then he posts a Wikipedia link, and I'm like, well, that wasn't a fact, that was a claim, and it was a claim really with no evidence back then. And I said, that's not really an answer. At best, it would be an argument from authority. In which realm are facts not facts? And so the guy said again, maybe in the case of Reddy, but that fact was decidedly disproved by Louis Pasteur and John Tyndall's experiment in the mid-19th century. And so I said, of course, the claim was disproven. Okay, so again, in which realm are facts not facts? So this is a claim here, and this is why when we do like these ABX tests or just when you show a DAW nulling, completely nulling, like here you get zero, nothing back, except for something 140 decibels down there that's really just a different dither algorithms or whatever. They will claim that's still a difference that you're going to hear, and you're not gonna. And so, I keep wondering, where does this denial of facts come from? And when you hear in the audio forums from more than one person now that facts are not always facts, so I'm asking again. So this guy, I said this is a claim. Spontaneous generation was a claim. It was never a fact. And so the guy says back, oh, it was never just a claim. The doctrine of spontaneous generation was coherently synthesized by Aristotle, who compiled and expanded the work of earlier natural philosophers and the various ancient explanations for the appearance of organisms, and was taken as scientific fact for 2 millennia. So, of course, depending on your definition of science, does it have to have the scientific method? Was Aristotle a scientist? And how would you know it's a fact? How was it ever a fact? So here's what I had answered. It was never a fact. It was always a claim. Depending on your definition of science, it may be extremely hard to be science for 2 millennia, certainly if you're counting the scientific method. So when was the scientific method formalized? I can't even spell method year. Let's just see if internet can find that. No. Why does it keep saying 7th grade? Scientific method history. Looks like Francis Bacon, 1561 to 1626. So definitely that, at least if you're calling it from the scientific method, it's not going to be 2,000 years or whatever. I continue. What I've always been trying to get at, and I'm not trying to be super pedantic, is always to try and understand the phenomenon of people who can't ABX between 2 mic preamps, still shouting to the hills that one still sounds far superior to another, or that DAW files that totally null somehow sound different. I'm wondering if there's an undercurrent of alternative facts or something in the audio community that makes this happen, or some sort of postmodernist type of hand wave that can reject any findings no matter how robust. And so that's really the question, right? Like, why do people believe this insanity? You know, not just. I mean, this is a pretty. If you were cranking these signals hard, I would say that, you know, there is could be a difference between your regular tube circuit and your regular transistor circuit. I think we can show that. They act different. You know, I think a lot of the things that we used to claim, even order versus odd order harmonics, they're not quite true. But when it comes to like mics and compressors and things like that, tube devices are often extremely linear, and they're actually operated in their linear range. So let me. I got another answer. I think this is from the guy who claimed that facts weren't facts. He says the ancient theory of what we can not see or sense or perceive can affect what we do see, perceive, causing anomalies. Just like a 100 kilohertz signal can change the sound of sound capture or the like, etc. Like, you can perceive some effect of a black hole, but it would be tough to actually experience it. Things like this. None of this is when facts aren't facts. Just because you can't see air doesn't mean that. I mean, I could drop a piece of paper right now, and I could drop a pen, and we can see the effect of air. I could blow on a piece of paper and move it. So we can, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not a fact. You could perceive some effects of a black hole. If you can perceive it, it's a fact. The fact is that you perceived it. You know, these are no times when facts aren't facts. Somebody else answered, at one time it was a fact the Earth was flat. It was never a fact the Earth was flat. The Earth was never flat. You're just showing how science works. The flat theory was disproven by science. Yeah. And somebody else said, yes, exploring the use of the word fact. And Scientific American article on, I forget what it was, I don't believe in facts, whatever. Again, yeah. I'm just going to go on from that. So somebody was saying that the OP expressed an extreme opinion based on one graph, which is mistaken science because it excludes all contributing factors. The extreme view had the predictable effect of luring others with extreme thinking. And somebody answered, you know, no, he asked the question in the form of a theory and wanted people to discuss the question to find an answer. You don't like people asking a question that might go against some folks' assumed understanding of life. You think it's a thought crime, perhaps. Don't criticize or cast doubt on the regime. If the answer to the question is found, why would it be good or bad? It would further understanding. And that's the thing. You know, a lot of us want to believe, in the words of some formerly wise person, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as I possibly can. And whether my beliefs are true is important to me. And if you show me that I'm wrong, that's a huge plus for me, because then I don't have to go around being wrong anymore. You know, so he continues. There seems to be some fearful anticipation that the answer will not be what you want to hear, perhaps. Else, what would be the problem in attempting to come up with one? The graphs are measurement. The meaning you wish to place on that graph is your mistake. Your understanding of that graph is one of an extreme anti-science belief, one that distorts what that graph is, means you are part of the extreme thinking group too. Let's see where we go from here. I think, somebody's saying, facts get disproven, so today's fact is tomorrow's fallacy. Yeah, that's not true. If it's really a fact, it's a fact. It could be today or tomorrow, unless it's time contingent. But, I mean, like, this balloon is not popped, and then 5 minutes later this balloon is popped. Yes, those are both facts. They contradict each other, but only if you put them on at the same time. Let's see if anybody cranked on me again. So the blue, who often commits the unpardonable sin of actually injecting rationality into these things. Said, one despairs at a quality of discourse that grabs desperately at redefinitions of a common word in order to prop up fallacious argument in a discussion which has become all but meaningless contention and humorless persiflage. This happens all the time in religious debates, or the word faith. Like, what does the word faith mean? Or the word hymn, let's say. You might have a certain definition in one context, and then somebody might use a different definition and use that definition against you when, you guys both know what you're talking about. MTV of all people, when they had their famous redefinition of racism, right? That's a really common thing. How bad is your argument when the only way you can defeat it is to redefine or to use an alternate definition than your opponent was using for a certain word? How about being honest instead? Okay, so here's where, we get in real trouble here. Not the original poster of the thread, but the person who said that sometimes facts aren't facts, says, I'm a way out of the box thinker here. In my opinion, the biggest problem is that a sound is not two-dimensional, it is 3+ dimensions. Using a two-dimensional graph can be and often is misleading when you throw other crud on top of it, such as how an audio signal path is often treated or thought of as a concise non-three-dimensional process. The bus starts going over the cliff, and things get a bit blurry to most people. Yes, you can find correlations in specific tests and very important pertinent abilities of mic, but many of them are far from perfect. Until sound capture theorists, engineers start making inroads on today's basic flaws of how we are currently trying to capture a multidimensional sound, there will probably be just more baby steps forward. If we innovate a new sound capture method, maybe such as singing through a specific three-dimensional block of air that better captures the minute sound pressure waves' actions and reactions within themselves, maybe a thorough theoretical mist and lasers can register what's actually going on. Only then will sound capture technology make a major leap forward. There's a lot to that. We don't know because we haven't captured things that way. Perhaps that could be just completely out of the question. But the blue has to answer, how many dimensions to an audio signal carried by wire? And somebody else answers, electrons are three-dimensional. And thankfully, somebody says this thread is comedy gold. Okay, so again, the facts aren't always facts guy says, much of the gate and measurements is in 2 dimensions while it is acting in 3D, while there is, in my humble opinion, much more than that. He's making a claim, but he's saying in his opinion. The blue again, talking about signal, no need to get into a quantum quandary about elemental particles. As I suspect we all know, an audio signal exists in 2 dimensions of measurement, electromotive force, voltage, across time. That's it. That is it, but, are you going to show nonlinearity? Well, actually, you would show nonlinearity that way. It's just that graphs may not show exactly how you want the graphs to show everything, So we get the facts aren't facts guy. It's a matter of opinion. That is, in my opinion, for now. You say that signal only exists only in 2 dimensions of measurement, but what you did not say was that the force was actually taking place in a higher dimension. The traveling of this force within 3D wires really explains much of what is called a tube sound, etc. Okay, so that is a crazy claim. So the traveling of a certain force in 3 dimensions inside a wire is what creates the tube sound. This is where I said above, this is where we do not agree. We not live in 3 dimensions? And do not the other dimensions affect the 2 dimensions of measurement and vice versa, and all dimensions are correct or no? The Japanese model of the 3 dimensions of the 10 dimensions were expandable, and thus was the reason of their flux tube fluon expansion theory is interesting, and this model may explain why we live in 3 large spatial dimensions is really cool. But the "it may explain why we live" is key here. If one does not talk about the flaws, imperfections, or measuring in 2 dimensions, whereas what is happening is 3 dimensions, then my point is missed. There is nothing you said above different than me, but except that you said there is no need to discuss it. I believe how this force travels is extremely important, and it has a huge effect on the sound. Signals travel different in silver than in copper and a zillion other conduits, not just in speed. In my opinion, this is where a sound can pick up a tube sound or a non-tube sound. This is more coherent than Deepak Chopra, but it's dangerous. So, the blue has to answer. Where to start? Not that I really want to, but one fundamental issue. In the classic model, we don't live in 3 dimensions. We live in at least 4 dimensions. 3 dimensions of spatial measurement and 1 dimension of time measurement. I'll leave it to the theoretical physicists to go beyond the basic 4. The words I choose have actual defined meanings in classical physics. The properties involved are measurable. Their relationships have been understood and measured for a long, long time. One can launch into a flight of fancy to try to describe what he imagines to be ineffable qualities in that audio signal over wire that have somehow remained hidden from centuries of observation and measurement, but the classical physics describing the phenomenon is well understood, accepted, and self-consistent. Me, I look for magic and mystery in art, in the human yearning for meaning and purpose, and in the unexplored vastness of existence. So, and this has been said over and over and over again, there are a lot of things maybe we don't understand, but there are a lot of things, especially about this stuff, that we do understand. We understand the quantities, we understand the qualities, we understand the dimensions. There's like, this is always a God of the gaps argument. And so this guy says, you made my case for me. The signal does not live in a 2-dimensional space. So the blue says again, I'm quite curious as to what you believe these other dimensions besides amplitude and frequency are. Again, I do believe in the mystery and magic of the music experience, but I tend to think the magic and mystery is in our human response to music, not some heretofore unrecognized physical property of audio signal, if you catch my distinction. And, somebody gets back to me when I said, which realm are facts not facts in? I don't know if you meant I was supposed to say, in which realm are facts not facts, but he said, Yoda's grammar coach. Is that you? Happy again to see you, I am. But wouldn't it be happy again to see you, am I? I don't know. So someone answers, I think there's something more to it than that. Something we can't measure at all. I can't prove it scientifically any more than you can prove your theory, though. Actually, he can prove his theory. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a theory. I will say, if music is really only about our perception, and there's nothing more to it than that, I wouldn't want to play at all. What an incredibly meaningless endeavor that would be. Well, sorry, dude. Like, physics doesn't really care how you feel about it. If you need some magical nonsense to be running behind your microphone in order for you to appreciate the music that you're creating, I think that says more about the music you're creating. This has nothing to do with what the technology actually is. And so I had to answer. I should submit the last few pages of this to our students as a textbook example of God of the gaps. And this is, we've talked about God of the gaps how many times on here, but let's just let me see if there's a good meaning here. God of the gaps is a theological perspective in which gaps in scientific knowledge are taken to be evidence or proof of God's existence. It doesn't have to be a religious, it doesn't have to be that kind of religious argument, but it's what happens whenever you find the answer to a problem. And so they say, oh yeah, but what about from here to here? Like how do you make this sound? It's like, it's just, the best one is transitional fossils. You'll hear a creationist say, you'll never find a transitional fossil. So you show them a transitional fossil. And so they said, okay, well, now you got 2 gaps. You got the one before the transitional fossil and the one after the transitional fossil. So there's always going to be a God of the gaps. And thankfully, somebody answers, isn't your perception of the music and the perception of others, if relevant, their response and your response to all those things good enough? Seems good to me. So the blue had to answer. It is not my theory. It is basic physics. Audio signal in a wire has two dimensions of measure, amplitude and time. Amplitude. See, this is how cool Amplitude has been for having the balls to put the first harmonizer out there. It's hard for me to say amplitude and think amplitude. I always think of amplitude. But anyway, sorry. What else is there? If you can't answer that question, maybe you're looking for the wrong things in all the wrong places. If one is looking for the magic in music, one should look inside oneself, not at fluctuating current in a wire. Thank you. Oh yeah, see, thank you. If I recall correctly, the M goes before the I in Yoda speak, so it'd be happy again to see you, M-I. Yeah, see? Let's see, is there any more? Not really. Basically, I'm always wondering, where do people get these crazy religious ideas about audio? Especially you guys with your you can't put this pickup in a mahogany guitar. It only works in a poplar or ash guitar or whatever. But the thing is with these is that nobody ever actually brings in evidence, do they? They make the claim, and if you bring in evidence, it's almost like it counts against you, which is just bizarro. I think we've kind of done this one to death. Okay. So we had a problem where, talk about op amps versus, and this is just me being pedantic, but they're talking about, when he's talking about replacing the tube with the transistor and seeing if you're going to hear a difference in sound if you did it all, everything else being equal, which is a little bit tricky. Somebody said, haven't heard the term op amp used that way. A technician will tell you that an op amp is an integrated circuit chip that packs several transistors and other components into the package, which makes for ease of analog circuit design, amplifiers, filters, etc. A discrete op amp, such as from API, is similar but a big package that internally contains separate transistors, etc. And so I quoted that and said, then that technician would be wrong. And it's because not all... Well, first of all, op amps were originally discrete components, weren't they? Rupert Neve calls this stuff op amps, that's for damn sure, and they weren't ICs at the time. So not all op amps are ICs, and not all ICs are op amps. So let me just quote that real quick. Not all ICs are op amps, and not all op amps are ICs. Go tell that to Rupert Neve. Of course, he's dead now, but whatever. Anyhow. So that's, this is the kind of magical thinking we're always talking about here. Now, I wonder, it's almost when you get like a cultural anthropologist to really take a look at this stuff. Now, something came up, and I'm not sure which version of Reaper. It was pretty recent, though, I think, a month ago or so. But somebody had put on a forum about how Reaper's latency engine had changed or something, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about? But not quite true, but what this does mean is there's a new thing. Scott Stillwell pointed it out for me. Thank you. I'm sure John Tidy has a video on this too, by the way. Where it says chain PDC mode, plug-in delay compensation mode. And it says you can choose between per chain compensation, per effects compensation, classic Reaper 1.0 to 6.19, ignore plug-in delay. And this may or may not be something important to you, so you might want to take a look at this. This is it sounds pretty serious. I haven't messed with anything. I tried to use zero latency plugins as much as I can, but I'm wondering if this is possibly going to fix some of the Waves Tune issues. I doubt it, but sorry, again, phone calls. This is something you probably want to go take a look at. I'm hoping maybe it does fix Waves Tune, but I'm kind of giving up on that anyway. I'm tired of the glitches and everything else. Hopefully we'll build our own version. So, every once in a while, and you've seen this happen to me. Actually, you've seen this happen to me since the beginning of Reaper, before it even came out, right? People will make claims about that I haven't used this gear or whatever, and that's why I don't believe these magical claims, when in fact I've tested the gear and I can show you that they either work or don't work certain ways. And I bring the evidence, and it's just crazy how people never seem to bring, the people who make these kind of claims don't bring the evidence. This is yet another post about Cloudlifter and Fathead and all that. And you get some guy in here. So now people are saying it will be good for using with just cheap interfaces. Well, I totally disagree with that. Well, I disagree with that too, because if you guys have actually done these tests, even the cheap Behringer interfaces get worse, not better, when you're talking about noise with the Cloudlifter and that kind of stuff. And you should expect that. You're putting more amplifiers in line. The only thing this could possibly help with is if you're picking up noise in the line between the microphone and the mic preamp. Then maybe having a stronger signal ahead of time would help. But otherwise, you're just adding noise. So this guy goes on to say, I love the responses here from people deriding the Cloudlifter type pre's. I can tell from their responses that they haven't used one. Well, I have a bunch of high-end colored preamps. I bet you don't. I bet you don't. I bet you have a bunch of preamps, but I bet you they're not colored. I bet you that if you were to measure these things, that all this color nonsense, it doesn't even exist. I think color is a myth, and it's just completely a myth. I mean, if you go and distort stuff, sure. But let me go on. Neve, Manley, BAE, UA, Longevin, and I can tell you from experience that Cloudlifters make it much easier to get into the zone when using color preamps like the Great River. If you're really trying to distort the mic preamp, sure. If you're trying to run it in your linear zone, not even. And so I had to answer. So I answered the quote, he quoted. So I quoted, I love the responses here from people deriding the Cloudlifter type pre's. I can tell from their responses that they haven't used one. Well, I have a bunch of high-end color preamps, Neve, Manley, BAE, Longevin, and I can tell you from experience that Cloudlifters make it much easier to get into the zone when using color preamps like the Great River. And so I just had to answer, or they have all this stuff and more and have actually done the measurements and are willing to provide the test results. Because that's what it is. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you're going to come with a bunch of claims, you better bring the evidence. And that's where I'm going to leave you for this week. I'll see you guys next